Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for Brabant for organizing today's event, and thanks to all the guests for being here. As said, my name is Martijn Stamm. I'm the Director of Traffic and Transport for TNO, as well as the President of TNO Japan. Today I want to give a short introduction to what TNO is and what we do specifically in the mobility field. In the previous presentation, there was a nice overview of all the activities that the sector is doing within Brabant and the Netherlands on mobility innovations. But as mentioned there already, part of these innovations is ecosystems, collaborations between private, public parties that can actually make this transition work. And the knowledge institutes that we have in the Netherlands, in Brabant, are quite important in that. So I'm very happy that we can also highlight TNO here. Today there are many other colleagues from other divisions of TNO also here for the other track as well. So if you have any questions about the other topics, please approach my colleagues. So, TNO. TNO was founded in 1932. So we celebrate our 90th birthday this year. We have a long history. And our mission was back then, and still is, to connect people and knowledge. We do that to create innovations. And with those innovations, we have two main tasks. We boost the competitive strength of the industry within Brabant, within the Netherlands, but these days also very globally. And we improve the well-being of society in a sustainable way. TNO is an independent research organization founded by law, but independent. So it means that we are not part of government and we are not part of private industry. We can truly do independent research. We have a very multidisciplinary setup to do this. We're not for profit. It's good to mention that as well. So our main task is to create knowledge and bring that to our partners in multidisciplinary international relationships. We work with over 3,400 professionals. I think we're currently at 3,500 professionals. So we have a very large team. And for this multidisciplinary approach, we are active in many fields. Just to give you a little bit of a feeling today, my unit is traffic and transport, which is on the top, and it's focused on all mobility research, which I will cover later. But we have many other fields, as you can see here, just to give some examples. Industry, which is represented today here for all kinds of high-tech innovations. ICT, with topics that range from data to cybersecurity to all kinds of things. But also energy transition, where we can focus, for instance, on the energy availability side of mobility. Within TNO, there's no walls between these sections, so we can use all disciplines within the research we're doing. So if we're talking about traffic and transport today, for our mobility research, we collaborate with all of these fields, all of these sections, to make our innovations work.
To us, zero is not the starting point, it's the goal. We envision a future with cleaner skies and livable cities through zero emissions. Safety for all in a traffic and transport system with zero casualties. And zero loss, with seamless movement and optimal efficiency in logistics and mobility. We accelerate transitions, offering technical innovations, out-of-the-box solutions and thorough analysis. We are TNO, and our unit Traffic and Transport is striving for no less than zero.
So, a little bit more specifically about our unit, Traffic and Transport. I was very happy to hear in the early morning speech of the Vice Governor to hear him mention 3 zeros, which almost 100% match the zeros that are in our strategy. So, as you just heard in the short movie, we work towards these 3 zeros that are on the screen now to create an efficient, sustainable and inclusive traffic and transport system. Especially that last part is also very important. It was also mentioned by Albi in his speech. We want to create mobility that is available to all and that solves societal problems. not just create movement for the sake of movement. So just to highlight a little bit, zero emissions means that we want to strive to a 100% clean mobility system. Emissions in the sense of poisonous emissions, nitrous oxide emissions, particulate emissions, especially important nowadays, need to go down, but also the CO2 footprint, of course, needs to go to zero ultimately. Zero casualties represent safety for us because it's also very important that new solutions that might solve other problems, you can think about, for instance, micromobility, scooters, they can solve many problems on the inclusivity side, but they also need to be safe for everybody that's using them and also for people, for instance, on the sidewalks that could be hit by such a modality. So casualties is something that needs to go to zero as well. And the third one, which is in balance with the other two, is zero loss. And we've chosen the term loss here because we think that nothing should be lost. And you can think of efficiency in that sense, logistics efficiency, so no empty trucks running around, but also, for instance, efficiency on fuel usage. But also importantly, nobody should be left out. And that's again the inclusivity. So when you talk about the well-being of society as a target for the mobility system, it should be inclusive and available to everybody, and nobody should be left out. I will go into much more detail later in the follow-up session, but just to give a short overview of our roadmaps, we work on sustainable and smart and safe innovations. I think those terms speak for themselves. But what is very important to note is that TNO is active on all three layers of mobility as we see them. So we are working on in-vehicle innovations, building components, technology, controls, software, hardware that actually makes vehicles cleaner and safer. You can think about new powertrains, but also new algorithms for positioning in autonomous driving, really innovations that end up in a vehicle. We do that always with our partners, but it's quite an important step to take. But if you just work on the vehicle, there's no guarantee that the system would be better. So on system level, so a multitude of vehicles, we work on sustainable and smart mobility and logistics. From the logistics side, for instance, thinking about self-organizing logistics, data-driven logistics, trying to get the system as a whole to be as efficient as possible. But also from a mobility standpoint, if you look at emission, for instance, just making the vehicles cleaner and cleaner might not be the solution. You also want to prescribe where vehicles can go. How can they operate within an urban environment, for instance? So emission legislation is also very important. And that's what we do in the sustainable mobility layer here. But ultimately, as I said, we want to make everything come together at the societal level. If we create mobility solutions that only work for small sections, it's not going to work. So at the top level, at societal level, we work on tooling and models that will help governments, local governments, larger governments, to make the right decisions on how do you enable these transitions. Do you create space for autonomous vehicles in your city center if it's already dense? Do you allow micromodalities? Do you allow platforms like Uber and Lyft to be introduced? And how? And these are the decisions we're supporting with the top layer of our roadmaps in societal impact. So just a little deep dive into the vehicle side. We're focusing on that today. So first on the sustainability side, I'm not going to go over everything that's in here, but just to give you a little bit of a feeling, we're working on 4 focus areas for teams, from the energy carrier side all the way to the governance and the policy side. And as you can see here, there's many, many innovations that we as TNO are active in, but that are also very relevant in the outside world. And the difficulty here is that these things all interact. So if you talk, for instance, from the top, the availability of certain fuel types or energy carriers is quite important to make decisions all the way on the bottom. And because of this complexity, we have made some choices on the vehicle side of where we want to focus on. And that, as you can see on this slide, means that we are active in all powertrain types for the vehicles. So we're working on electrifying powertrains, electrified powertrain solutions, fuel cells, but also still on the combustion engine, specifically for hydrogen combustion. especially in the transition towards 2050, the feasibility for long-haul or heavy-duty applications of the fuel cell is low. So we're expecting that the combustion engines will still play a big role in certain applications. It was also already mentioned by Albi. You can see there a DAF truck. It's the first hydrogen truck that we developed together with our partner DAF. And finally, we run a specific innovation center for the sustainable powertrains to be able to validate the solutions that we create. This slide gives a little bit more detail, just to give you a feeling. We can detail this out much more, but that's for the next section. So on the hydrogen combustion engine, we do platform conversion, so actually creating the systems, but also do experimental and numerical research on the fundamental side. And we are building, together with DAF, a vehicle demonstrator and validator. We deploy, for instance, to make electrification better possible, modular energy management, where we can optimize the in-vehicle energy strategy, making sure that battery packs are used well during usage, but also with an optimal lifespan and an optimal value after the usage of a vehicle. And by doing that, we don't just make the vehicle better when it's used, we also, for our OEM partners, reduce the development time and total cost. Finally, on the fuel cell side, we are working now on STASH, which is a EU project to standardize fuel cells. I think that's a very important step to take because it's very different systems now that are available. And by standardizing, then different parts of a fuel cell can be interchangeable and better systems can be built. We're optimizing the existing PEM fuel cell technology, but we're also very active in setting up a solid oxide fuel cell technology for mobile applications. Like I said, just to give you a little bit of a feeling, it's time-wise too short to go into this, but we'll continue that in the next section. So the same thing for smart vehicles. I think I covered or touched upon a lot of these topics already in the previous part, but a lot is happening when you look at the mobility need and the need for transport. So more and more we're working in a city context. I don't think I need to explain any of this while we're in Tokyo here. We sometimes think in the Netherlands that we are a dense country, but that's not true when you look around here. But urbanization is a very important transition globally, with scarcity of space, scarcity of healthy environments, and scarcity of energy as a result. And cities want to remain vibrant within that context. One of the other things that's growing from that is more and more focus on logistics hubs. So instead of a very spread out distribution system, things are getting more and more focused and pulled out of the cities. And that also has a lot of benefits, but also causes a lot of complexity in the system. And maybe also related to that, but also very important, the infrastructure becomes more and more complex when you bring new mobility solutions to the field. Both the physical and the digital infrastructure needs to be able to cope with these new modalities. And that means that we can't just keep putting more asphalt down and making the roads wider. We have to actually create corridors specifically for certain applications to allow these transitions in the mobility field to work. So we focus on 4 developments. I think one more, yep. In the smart side, so automation, connected automated driving, digitalization, so things like Internet of Things, mobility as a service, the data-driven economy, and also the energy transition is mentioned here specifically on the smart side, because also from the smart side, a focus should be on getting things more sustainable. Smarter transport can also mean cleaner transport. Finally, the overview of what we do then on smart vehicles. We're working on automating yards, and with that we mean enclosed areas. That can be logistics yards, can be airports, can be ports, where we're working on all kinds of topics. We're creating connected and cooperative vehicles and mobility, and we're proving and validating and ensuring that technology is safe to be put on the market, that automated driving systems can be safely introduced into the system with our street-proof and streetwise methodologies. So a little bit more on that. Automated yards are becoming more and more important, I think also here in Japan, where in the past the trend in automation was to try to make all vehicles ultimately clever, being able to drive completely by themselves. We see now that that's a trend that's maybe a little bit more for the long-term future. So most applications of automated driving and the business cases around that are on a specific area, being it maybe a shipping yard, a container yard, could be a bus depot as well. And able to make those innovations work on those yards, you need safety concepts, you need to be able to plan, you need to be able to have good localization, and you have to know what the environment looks like from the vehicle. And that's what we are working on these automated yards. That's very much on the technical side, together with our connected innovations. But the other two focus areas I want to highlight are very important from, let's say, a more mobility system standpoint. So street-proof and streetwise are meant to make sure that vehicles that are being developed can actually be put on the market. We see in Europe much difficulty between the private, so the industry partners, and the public partners, the government, on how do you prove, how do you make sure that a vehicle is actually safe. So we do that by street-proof, where we do monitor deployment, making sure that the vehicle stays safe, that we check how the humans interact with it, and we do that with streetwise, which is a scenario-based safety methodology that we can use to actually make sure that the development processes with the companies end up with safe products that can then actually be approved by the road authorities. So it's quite important that we link all of those levels. I can tell so much more, and I will in the next section, but I hope this gives a little bit of an overview specifically on the vehicle innovations that we are doing, also here in Japan with a lot of our OEM partners. And with that, I want to close my presentation for today. Thank you for your attention, and I hope to see you in the next section.